I guess I'm the last speaker before we end the day. So thank you everyone for staying back. I'll keep it really short. It was a fairly healthy debate that we just had around the state of online versus offline. And I think it's just good for us to sort of level set of where we are in our, okay, I just need to be a little closer, or where we are in our online landscape in India, and where does Forrester see the growth for offline retail and online happening over the course of the next few years. So, you know, the reason I wanted to sort of put this in, just to sort of level set the perspective of when we look at multiple markets globally, there are multiple phases that they go through. Some would argue that India is in phase 4. I believe India straddles between phase 3 and phase 4 when we look at sort of the development of every market of what sort of they go through. And the reason I state this is when you look at the landscape of online retail, there's a lot of talk about how much it is growing, yet the majority of transactions that happen, at least from a share of value perspective, happen within consumer technology products, mobile, consumer electronics, appliances. However, we're starting to see a lot of growth coming in from apparel and what we call as subjective goods, footwear, and that's where we've seen a lot of growth coming from. That's why I think we sort of straddle between those four areas. And the reason this is important is when we sort of look at how India compares to the rest of the globe, global markets, it's kind of interesting to see how it straddles. This is a bit of a complicated way to look at it, but essentially the way you want to think about this is what's the overall opportunity that we have in retail in India, and how's the environment that is currently built around for us to sort of support e-commerce in this market. Essentially, the point over here is when we look at India as an overall market, there's a lot of potential opportunity given the overall nature of retail and even so the growth of organized retail. However, when we look at the overall sort of infrastructure development that we see vis-a-vis other markets, it's still not there. However, there's a lot of potential for us to sort of grow this, and we're seeing this over the last few years, how e-commerce in India has been sort of booming. The point that I really like to sort of think about when I'm looking at this market is, say, look at markets such as India versus, say, Brazil. Brazil is a fairly developed economy globally. Their overall GDP is probably about a third of that of India. Therefore, the retail opportunity is much larger in India. But when you look at sort of the environment or the e-commerce environment in a market like Brazil has been providing to its vendors and its consumers to sort of buy, it's slightly ahead. And you sort of go back about 6 years ago to Mercado Libre in Brazil that sort of really started this, and even to some of the other online marketplace companies. They really set the stage for how e-commerce was to develop in that market. We've caught up a long way, yet we believe that India currently sort of straddles between a large opportunity but yet underdeveloped when it comes to the overall environment for future growth. And the reason for that is quite simple, right? We talk about a billion-plus population, and I'm sure you all know this, right? We live in villages, but it's just good to sort of put it in perspective. When we look at all the growth that we've seen, it's supposed to have data, but I don't know why it's not saying. But if you look at all the growth that we're seeing in these markets, effectively tier 1 to 3 or 4 of the markets is where most of the e-commerce is sort of coming from. But a lot of growth is coming from tier 3, tier 4, but a good 68% of the population sort of is literally in villages. And that's one of the reasons why, even though there's hundreds of millions of people in India who are online, either through their mobile phone or through the PC, the percentage of people that we see buying online, which is sort of a metric that online retailers actually care about, is actually quite limited. About 18% of the online population buys online, right? So yes, there's 1 billion people. Out of that, about 400 million are online, varies based on which platform they're coming on. And about 16% of them actually bought something online, be it a small thing such as a digital download, or be it a pair of jeans or a mobile phone. We expect that number to sort of increase to about a quarter of the population, quarter of the online population that will buy online. It's still a large number, but yet it's not as huge as everybody thinks of it, and that's primarily because, online buying is essentially a tenured activity. You sort of tend to sort of move based on your experiences that you have, good or bad, to decide whether you're going to be an online buyer.